All right, everybody. So this is for lesson 1, the agricultural revolution. So we're going to explain how new innovations in farming led to the agricultural revolution. It's really important that we remember that the word agricultural deals with farming. Okay, that should be one of our global 9 words. We really need to make sure we know that word, okay? All right, so these are some of our big words for today. Mechanization, the process of changing from working largely or exclusively by hand or with animals to doing that work with machinery. So when we say mechanization, we should be thinking about the idea of machinery. So we have mechanization using different tools. Apparently the bells are on. So when we're looking at mechanization, we are figuring that we are no longer going to be doing things by hand or with animals. We're not going to have animal-led plows. We're going to have like machine-led plows. This is an extremely important word. Famine, the extreme scarcity of food. If you remember, scarcity is one of our enduring issues. It means the lack of something. So a famine is an example of scarcity, but in this case, we're specifically talking about an extreme lack of food. Textiles are a type of cloth or woven fabric, so we are going to make our textiles with this machinery, okay? And then raw materials, sometimes, and I believe it's coming up later in a lesson, raw materials might be known as natural resources, as I just see, I wrote it in there. So the basic materials from which a product is made. So when we're thinking of raw materials, we are thinking things like oil, cotton, we are thinking of coal, which is going to be one of our biggest, most important ones. Lumber. We are taking these things and we are building and making something else. All right, make sure that we understand maps. I know we don't like maps. We got to get over that. So this is a map of the Industrial Revolution. If first thing when we do and we get maps is we want to look at the title because it's telling us it's the Industrial Revolution in England, and then we want to look at the map key. So the map key tells what everything is. So this area right here is coal fields. The dotted line is canals. This is navigable rivers, which means that we can sail in them. And then textile centers, aka factories. So the question is asking 2 things that you think about the location of textile centers and factories. So what we're first looking for now is saying questions asking us about textile centers. So we're going to the textile center. We're looking for our little tiny triangles, and we're starting to kind of say, okay, like where are these triangles located? And in this case, we're thinking about geography. What are they located near? What is close to them? Why would those textile centers be there? Pause here, answer that question, move on to your notes. All right, so before the agricultural revolution, this is what everything was like. Your focus for taking notes should be on what is in the red section. So what we had was common land that was used by all the peasants to farm and hunt on. So when it was common, it means everyone had access to it. It was not, there were no individual farms. Everyone just used the same land. Farmers used a plow to create these ditches, and they just kind of like threw seeds into the ditches. So they would dig these holes, these ditches, and they would just sort of like toss seed around. Maybe they would cover them with dirt, but it was an extremely ineffective because everything was planted with little accuracy. So animals could eat the other seeds. They didn't all take. So what we ended up with was very little food. And food we couldn't count on. Then we had also a 3-crop rotation system. And what that meant was that you left one field fallow or empty every year, so you could not grow as much food. So again, we're thinking of very little food for 2 very big reasons. One, they're just sort of throwing seeds around and hoping it all works out. And second, they're leaving land just empty or fallow so that they couldn't use it to grow food. What we see after is a big shift. So peasants who once used common land, now they're going to work for farmers. Or, and here is our big key thing, if you have anything that you're going to highlight in your notes for this lesson, it needs to be this. They moved to nearby urban areas and got jobs in factories. That's going to happen. We need less farmers to grow food. So now there's no jobs on farms. So they move to cities. Okay. We're going to have new inventions like the Tulsidro, which is going to increase the crop yields, which just increase crop yields, the amount of food that's grown. And as a result, farmers could plant and grow more crops, which means more food is going to be available. Yay, we love food. As a result of the 4-crop rotation, we are now going to have things be more productive. So what they did was they planted things like turnips, because then animals and such could eat the turnips instead of having land that was empty. And this meant also that they didn't have to kill their livestock before every winter so that they had that food later. So Great Britain is going to lead the way in doing this. Great Britain is going to be the start of this. We have a couple big pieces: political stability. So unlike in France, so this is a very unlike France, who just went through and killed their king. Britain's government is functioning really well. So they're doing really well, which is going to allow them to have the time to do this. Labor. Farmers produce so much food that many people are able to do other types of jobs. Not everyone had to farm anymore. They could go work in factories. And then most importantly are going to be our raw materials, specifically coal. All right. Banking systems, loans are provided to finance large projects like factories, railroads, and coal mines. And then finally, the transportation system, which is going to be mostly your navigable rivers and your seaside ports. That is going to allow Great Britain to kind of like start this whole process. All right, textile industry. So before machines made, each piece of cloth was made by hand. Every fiber had to be cleaned, untangled, and twisted, and then the thread was woven into cloth. And this was all done by hand, which meant it took a long time. And it was much more expensive. So, and John Kay invents the flying shuttle to automate the weaving process. And these first machines were very large, so therefore factories were created to house these large machines. Their biggest resource is going to be rivers. All right, and we see that in the map on the previous page, right? There were a lot of rivers, a lot of canals, all right? And most of our factories are going to be run using water wheels, so they're going to be near rivers. We're going to see the same thing happen in the United States. There's a reason why Albany and Troy and Schenectady are right along rivers, okay? Eventually, though, the steam engine is going to replace, which allows factories to be built anywhere. In order to run a steam engine, you need coal, which Great Britain has a lot of. So they're going to be able to do these steam engines, right? Steam engines require large amounts of coal. And transportation. Because of this long coastline, there were a lot of ports, and ports meant that you could send ships for resources. Or trade. All right, and access the rivers would take them further into the country. Eventually, they're going to take the steam engine and they're going to apply it to railroads, which is going to increase Great Britain's ability to function even faster.